Councillor Flynn, Councillor Braden, Councillor Flaherty. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm City Councilor Lydia Edwards, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. It is Thursday, October 28, 2021, and we are here today for a virtual hearing on Docket 0901, which is an ordinance regulating predatory towing practices and establishing a towing bill of rights. This is sponsored by Councilor Braden and myself and referred to the committee on August 18, 2021. In accordance with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, we're modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law and having this hearing via Zoom. The public may watch this hearing via live stream at www.boston.gov/city-council-tv and on Xfinity 8 RCN 82 Verizon 964. It will also be rebroadcasted at a later date. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. If you wish to provide public comments and have not signed up to do so, please email christine.o'donnell@boston.gov to receive the link. This proposal regulates towing practices and established standards, especially in private tow companies, specifically looking at involuntary tows on private land, and also, again, has established a form of a towing bill of rights, or those who are towed bill of rights, and basic operating standards to make sure we're all clear of what should happen if or when our cars are ever towed, unfortunately. Does happen. So we have folks with, along with my colleagues, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Flaherty, and the lead sponsor, Councillor Braden. We also have Bradley Garrett, Interim Commissioner of the Boston Transportation Department, joining us. Joseph Smith, Supervisor of Enforcement System and Internal Operations of the Boston Transportation Department. Sergeant Matthew Spillane, Auditing and Review of the Boston Police Department. Melvin Boggs, Supervisor of Parking Enforcement Tow and Hold Unit of the Boston Transportation Department. Also joining the committee as panelists are Deidre Cummings of Sprig, MASSPIRG, Legislative Director, and of the Sprig, or MASSPIRG Education Fund, Consumer Program Director. Kim Lowell, Executive Director of the Statewide Towing Association. We will also hear public comments for those who have signed up and wish to have any concerns or questions, or just want to express support or opposition. That's free. That will happen after we do usually a round of introductions from the councilors. Then we would turn over to the first panel. Then we would turn on to the second panel and public testimony. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the lead sponsor, Councillor Braden, or co-sponsor, and I believe Councillor Flaherty and Councillor Flynn. I'm assuming Flynn, then Flaherty. Is that the order of arrival? Okay, and so I'll do that, and then we'll go to the panelists. Councillor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you for co-sponsoring this hearing today. This initiative was spurred, and I also want to thank all the panelists who are here to testify and share their knowledge and experience with us this afternoon. This initiative was spurred by several constituent complaints to my office over the past 2 years. Some of the complaints were pretty egregious, and they came from members of the community and also from police officers. The system as it's set up right now, the tow truck company, the driver is supposed to call in and get permission to tow from the BPD tow line. And that process usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes to get clearance to tow a vehicle. And we've heard several instances of, companies, Uber Eats or fast food delivery drivers who just stepped into a restaurant to pick up a delivery, and within minutes of 2 or 3 minutes of returning to their car was on the hook, and the tow truck driver refused to drop the car. And because it was such a short period of time, there's no way that the tow truck driver had got clearance from the tow line to pick up the car. We've had many instances of this, and really, these are the sort of cases that prompted our office to look into this issue and see if there were widespread predatory spotting tactics in which certain locations drivers were being picked up routinely and sort of entrapped in a situation where they would drop off, they would go to pick up food from a restaurant, they'd be picked up and told very, very quickly. And as we went into it more, we came across more and more more reports of different abuses. So I'm look forward to the conversation this afternoon, just to get a better handle on what is standard practice with regard to the tow line, and what are their reports of abuse that the different agencies have heard. So I've just handed over and want to just move on and hear from the folks who are the experts on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Before our next councillor, just wanted to note that Councillor Andrea Campbell has also joined us. I'm actually hearing it with Councillor Flaherty before you, Councillor Flynn. So we'll have Councillor Flaherty go, and then Councillor Flynn, and then Councillor Campbell.
Flynn, you got to get up earlier to beat me, pal. Madam Chair, and obviously to the lead sponsor, the co-sponsors, I concur with Councilor Braden. Obviously, the City of Boston, we do need tow support just because our fleet is not big enough to handle the entire city. But the focus really should be on public safety violations. That's hydrants and crosswalks and handicap ramps, etc. And it has become, and it's been brought to my attention as a citywide city council, it seems somewhat predatory when we've got the private tow companies grabbing, in some instances, 2-3 cars at a time. They'll have like 2 up on the flatbed and they'll be dragging 1 more behind. We also have, we've received information that they're going down one ways the wrong way, and really almost in like this I guess the fever maybe make up for lost time during COVID, so we obviously need to address that. If we're towing a vehicle, clearly the focus should be on making sure that it's for a public safety violation. Not quite sure street cleaning cuts the mustard, but we also were promised that in the event that when you're towing a car for street cleaning, that they would have hokies out there getting to the curb. That's really the focus of, if you can't clean the street and you can't get to the curb, that would be sort of the impetus behind towing a car. But if we're just towing the car and we're not actually cleaning the street or getting to the sidewalk, it's defeating the purpose. So time has come to have a hearing to just identify what are the rules and regulations. Is there predatory towing taking place? Again, referencing the need to have a partnership with our private tow companies, particularly when we're trying to move a large amount of vehicles in a short period of time. For example, during a snow emergency or a parade celebration, clearly get the role that they play and the need to have the partnership. But we are seeing a little over aggressive tactics, quite frankly, in some of the neighborhoods that we really need to rein that in. And we also should have a policy, to Councilor Braden's point a little while ago, when someone shows up at the scene when their car is still there and is being placed on the hook, or before that vehicle drives away, there should be a policy by which that car gets dropped. We should be more civil. We should be more. We should be offering more of sort of a courtesy perspective. We should not, once the person is there, we should not be towing that car miles away and then requiring them to either get into a taxi or an Uber or to get a ride all the way over to where the car gets towed. And we also should be sensitive as to when we're towing cars, the tow lot should be, in a close proximity to where we're towing the vehicle. You should be towing a car, say, from South Boston, and you're bringing it all the way over to Brighton to the Brighton lot. It's just, again, we're asking for common sense. We're asking for civility. We're asking for the ability for folks who are present to have their car dropped. And we're also asking the tow companies to be conscientious and don't go up one ways the wrong way, and don't get into sort of this feeding frenzy that you have to scoop up as many cars as possible during street cleaning day to pay your freight. That's not what a partnership's all about. And I think we got to get back to basics on this. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the lead sponsors.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Councillor Edwards, and thank you, Councillor Braden, for filing this ordinance, and Councillor Edwards for chairing this important hearing. For many, getting your car towed and spending a large amount on fees to get it back can be a big financial burden. And for many, having their car is necessary. The car is for them to get to work, go to appointments, take their kids to sports, take their kids to after-school programs, take their elderly parents to doctor's appointments. So a car is necessary for so many people. When we see, as Councilor Flaherty was talking about, unscrupulous towing companies charging excessive fees, that's outrageous. We're not out here, they should not be here to financially impact that family significantly. So these fees are outrageous. Councilor Flaherty talked about these tow companies, trying to pick 2 or 3 cars up at the same time on the truck. But I also noticed that they speed excessively through neighborhoods, sometimes going 30, 35 miles an hour. So that's a major concern for me, pedestrian safety, with a lot of these tow trucks driving so fast. So I'm glad we're having this hearing. I want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilor Braden and Councilor Edwards, for bringing this forward. And it's a hearing that impacts the quality of life of residents and making sure that Boston is a compassionate city as well. There's no need to charge someone an outrageous, excessive amount of money to have their car towed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Andrea Campbell.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I'm actually outside, so I will be brief, but did want to chime in to first thank Councillor Braden for this important discussion because it is a major constituent issue, particularly in certain parts of the city. Dorchester, Mattapan, we've been getting a lot of cases around folks who feel not only that certain practices are predatory, but also around the location in which their cars are brought to, which seems to be more detrimental to them than other communities. In addition to that, obviously folks are still struggling with COVID and are struggling to not only pay tickets, but to pay the fees associated with being towed. So a real conversation needs to be had. And of course, some things need to be changed. So thank you to the folks in the administration for joining as well. And thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add, I'm really excited about this conversation. I do think there's a certain level of grace that I've seen with some private actors, honestly, just lacking in terms of how they're treating. And I think all of us are here because the gravity of what is being taken from somebody, it isn't just their car, it's a massive amount of money, and it's a huge amount of time to get your car back, to do all of those things. And I do agree, I wanted to echo what Councilor Flaherty said. When we're talking about this being as a matter of public good being blocked because your car is there because you didn't move it for street cleaning, or there's an emergency or parade, or if someone's trying to build on their house and there's been adequate notice, that's one thing. But if it's just a private way and there's an inconvenience for someone, I just would hope that there be a process. There's a little bit more grace, again, considering what you're taking away from somebody. So I'm going to now turn it over to our first panel, which I believe involves our folks from the city of Boston. That includes Bradley Garrett, Joseph Smith, Sergeant Matthews Blanane, and Melvin Boggs. I don't know if you have a speaking or if some of you are just here to answer questions, but feel free to coordinate at your election.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. I'm Brad Garrett. I'm the Interim Commissioner for the Boston Transportation Department. With me are Melvin Boggs, who's the Supervisor of Parking Enforcement for our tow and hold unit, and Joseph Smith, who's the Supervisor of Parking Enforcement for our Systems and Operation unit. And together, we oversee the towing operation for the Boston Transportation Department. And as the councilors have addressed already, a lot of the language in this proposed ordinance does not relates to the private ways, not the public ways. But I thought I'd take a few minutes to describe the role that BTD does play in towing, particularly as it relates to, we do have a role in overseeing some of the private tow companies for street cleaning. So briefly, I just wanted to mention that we have a towing operation, which is based at 200 Frontage Road. We have tow trucks on the street from 7 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. We have a fleet of 23 trucks and 29 tow drivers. We focus on towing for public safety violations, crosswalks, cars parked in crosswalks, fire hydrants, too close to an intersection, no stopping. And we also tow for snow emergencies to make sure that the snow plows can get through and plow up to the curb. We tow for abandoned vehicles, mostly if they are in unsafe situations, if they're particularly if they're in poor condition. And we also, our fleet tows for street cleaning, but only in certain neighborhoods near our tow lot. As was already mentioned, we do try to have cars towed to locations that are nearby where they're being towed from for street cleaning. Our department tows in the South End and Mission Hill. Private tow companies tow in other locations, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also tow or actually try not to tow for vehicles that are parked in spaces that are permitted for moving vans. We are the department that's responsible for responding to requests from Boston residents when there are moving vans parked in spaces for which they have obtained temporary no parking permits. But knowing that it's often residents nearby that location, we go way out of our way to, not way out of our way, but we do our best to contact the owners of those cars by using their license plates or the resident parking permit information, and are generally successful in contacting people so that we don't have to tow their vehicles. We also provide support for the Public Works Department when they're doing street construction. That's another situation in which we have tow trucks on the street, but we actually do not generally do any towing of vehicles away from the scene. We're there to have for visibility to let people know that the street is going to be worked on. And again, we will contact residents to move their cars rather than tow them away. That's something that Boston Transportation can do because we have access to license plate information that some of the private tow companies generally do not. The other thing I want to mention is that we do have a responsibility. Our second major responsibility for towing is to oversee the street cleaning tows for the city of Boston. The Boston Transportation Department issues a request for qualifications every 3 years. And under this procurement process, we select a group of tow companies to perform towing services to support the city's street cleaning program. And generally, tow companies are located in the neighborhoods where they tow. And each tow requires the approval of the Boston Police Department. Also, under the contract that we have with the private tow companies, there is no fee if someone comes out to their car before the car is removed from the curb for street cleaning. So even though those private companies we do have that requirement for them. We've read the proposed ordinance regarding regulating predatory towing practices and establishing a towing bill of rights, and we look forward to working with the city council as it moves forward. We're here to answer any questions. And with that, I'll turn it back to Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much. I didn't know if, I think it's the Sergeant Spillane.
Hello, Councilor. Yes, I think it would make sense for me to go next and kind of give you an appropriate equivalent summary of Boston Police's role. So good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Detective Matthew Spillane from the Boston Police Department Audit and Review Unit. I am new to this role in the last 3 months, so please bear with me if I do not have all the answers to your questions today, but I will do my best to provide you with the knowledge I have based on my experience as a police officer, as there's really no one tow overseer at the police department. I do hope the information I give you today will be helpful to assist with the ordinance you're trying to create. I'd like to start with the reasons why the Boston Police Department tows vehicles, which generally speaking fall into a category of if the mayor declares a state of emergency for snow removal, we're part of going out, making announcements and removing those vehicles from the street for public safety reasons. Vehicles which are stopped, standing, or parked in violation of the traffic rules, under which those are subject to removal. Vehicles that are hazard or a threat to public safety for some reason. Vehicles that are interfering with the operations of the Boston Fire Department. Vehicles that have been reported stolen and we're recovering. And vehicles that have been involved in some sort of accident that the owner is not able to clear the vehicle out of the road in a reasonable amount of time, or if there's some sort of law enforcement interaction with that vehicle, such as the arrest of the operator or evidentiary reasons to tow the car. So that's kind of in a nutshell most of the reasons I can think of off the top of my head that we tow cars. My current unit plays a role in monitoring towing contractors for the police department, in the sense that each district maintains a tow log of the contractors we have available to ensure that the tows are distributed in an equal and equitable manner to the companies that the commissioner's office and contracts has selected to do towing for the police department, as well as an inspection of those tow lots to ensure they're in compliance with the contract for things like having a minimum lot capacity of 50 cars, the proper permits with the state, visible posting of tow rates, 24-hour operations, and lighting, things of that nature. When a police officer tows a vehicle, he's required to receive permission from a patrol supervisor to do so. He's also required to collect information about that vehicle and its owner and provide that to the tow company at the time of the tow, and then to complete a police incident report, including the VIN, the condition of the vehicle, if there's any damage, the contents of the vehicle, the owner's information, the tow contractor, and the receipt number must go on the police report. The operations division here also plays a role in that it's a more administrative task, but they operate the tow line, which is a 24/7 operation, and that acts as kind of a central repository so that owners looking to locate the tow lot where their vehicles have been towed have a means to do so and prevent vehicles from incorrectly being reported stolen that were in fact towed. The information the operations division collects right now includes vehicle information such as year, make, model, VIN, the registration, a license plate information, the color, as well as tow information such as the reason for the tow company and the phone number of the tow company, the driver's name from the tow company, the street information and cross street where the vehicle was towed from, and whether the vehicle was towed as a police tow, a BTD tow, or a private tow. Looking at the proposed ordinance, many of the categories A through G that they're looking for the police department to collect, we are actually already collecting in an electronic format that could be provided to where the city council wanted it sent to. I do notice there are some gaps though, mainly the first one, item A, which would be the name and address of the person, property owner, company, other business in lawful control of the private way or property who is directing the tow be conducted. That is not currently collected, but the tow system was developed internally, and I think it could be modified to add that field. And then obviously the clerks up in operation would need to be updated with instructions to collect that in tows moving forward. The other gap I noted was the means by which the operator was advised that parking was prohibited on the private property, such as verbally or prominently displayed sign. Again, that's not something that's currently collected, but I think that system would be able to be modified to collect that information. And then the final one was whether the entry was required into the vehicle's interior for safe towing. And if not, the reason for the intrusion, again, not currently collected, but I think it would be a minor change to the system they had. And I think we'd be able to work with the informations group and the clerks up in operations to collect that moving forward. And then finally, with regards to complaints about towing, the information I have is based mainly on what the boston.gov website, which basically indicates that Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities ultimately oversees tow companies and their permitting. And we generally direct people to them if they have issues. I hope the council and interested parties find this information helpful in crafting the ordinance. Thank you.
That was extremely thorough, extremely helpful. Thank you for going into the breakdowns of the information, especially parts that informing us already what you're doing, and then where there were some differences. And I really do, I'm speaking on behalf of as the committee chair, but I think on behalf of my colleagues as well, your breakdown of where the differences are and your thoughts about that as well was also extremely helpful. So thank you very much for that, and for just being on the job. What you said, 3 months.
I'm sorry. This assignment is 3 months. I'm in my 16th year here.
Sorry. Sorry. In any event, it was a compliment.
No problem.
To you. It was a compliment to you, and
I'll
thank
say
you
hi
very
to
much.
my former classmate Andrea Campbell from Boston Latin.
Oh. So I think after. Okay, so BTD, you were all speaking kind of together. Brad, you did an umbrella. Okay, and so Joseph Smith and Melvin Boggs, you'll be available for questions with Brad for any of the, okay? And then we just heard from Sergeant Spillane. So what we're gonna do now is, and I think there's only 2 other panelists, and if it's okay with the other code sponsor, Councilor Braden, would it be okay if we just went ahead and had Deirdre and Kim go?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then, so what we can then do is do our round of questions from all of our counselors to all of you, because I think there's just good to have all the perspectives. So we have the administration, we have consumer, and then we also have from the State Towing Association as well. So appreciate that all the stakeholders are at the table. So if it's okay, we'll go ahead with Deidre, and then Kim, you'll go after Deidre. Is that okay?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Terrific. Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Deirdre Cummings. I am the legislative director for Mass Perg. Mass Perg is a 45-year-old nonprofit, nonpartisan consumer advocacy organization. And I'm here today just to share some of the information that we have collected around consumer protections around towing, what some of our findings were, and then to support this proposal to really protect the residents in Boston and those who shop here and work here, who may have their cars towed. First, let me just tell you what the way we got into this actually is a number of years ago now. I was getting random calls from people about issues of towing, and it came in the form of some of the examples that we have heard here by some of the counselors, which is, I was at a Dunkin' Donuts, I went into the bathroom, I came out and my car was gone. And people in the Dunkin' Donuts said, hey, some truck driver was here screaming, I'm towing cars. And then by the time he came out, his car was gone. Or, my car was towed and I didn't even know that was a tow area. And then, some of the other frustrating stories were with folks who had called to say, yes, they did park in the wrong place. However, trying to get their car back was an ordeal, trying to find out where it was, trying to get to that location, and then in some places arriving and having to pay cash. And as you know, a lot of people today don't really carry cash. And so again, we started looking at the issue. Well, there is a role for towing and we all recognize that. But really, we ought to be thinking, well, what are the basic consumer protections we ought to be providing to ensure that this bad situation just doesn't turn into something horrible? What we did is we came up with 14 of those consumer protections. We released it in a report last year, and that I can make available to the committee. And in that report, we included just basic consumer protections like, we should post that this is a tow zone. And if so, what are the rates associated with this? Let's prevent the problem from happening in the first place. We recommended that there were prohibitions against predatory towing. So, where you have tow truck drivers just circling a lot for 1 second where they can pull a car in a second and take off, and making sure that, yes, if you see your car getting towed, the purpose is to remove the car. So if you're there, you should be able to take it off the hook. You may have to pay a little bit of money, but at least you could remove the car and you don't have to go to the ordeal of trying to locate it. What we found out here, so we did a state-by-state survey of these basic consumer protections. And what we found is Massachusetts, and you're absolutely right, the police officer here said that the Department of Public Utilities, they're the ones that set the towing laws. Cities and towns can adopt their own and go further than what the basic regulations are. So we just looked at the state regulations, and of the 14 consumer protections that we listed, Massachusetts only guaranteed 6 of those. So I think what you have done here is really captured that area where yes, we do have some basic consumer protections here, but they're inadequate. They need to be updated. And this proposal before you today really does take an important step forward in making those updates. And just quickly, the areas that we feel are the strongest are the ones where we want to make sure that those consumer protections are in place, the ones that we surveyed other states and what they have and what we would recommend. So there's a ban on predatory towing, a disclosure of the fees and the rates. And this is important. A lot of people would tell me they would show up at a tow lot and there's no posting of any fees or rates. We want to allow or make sure that every tow company, that they take more than just cash. They should take everything, except for Bitcoin, I suppose. But anyway, so they should be able to, most people don't carry cash nowadays. We should let consumers pay for their car without having to bring cash. Photos are a big deal. Everybody can take a photo with their phone, right? And so an important protection there for the consumer is let's have the tow operators take a picture before it's towed. Again, making sure that the car can be released. Now that is a requirement. So the state DPU law states that every tow truck driver has to let down a car that's being towed. They can charge as much as half what that regulated tow rate is, but they must let it down. They must drop it. So that's important. Reimbursement, if they tow unfairly or illegally, you should be able to get reimbursed. And what's good about this is that it includes in that reimbursement the transportation costs it took you to go to that tow lot and the time that it took you to get it. The annual reports, this wasn't in our list of consumer protections, but these annual reports will give a good look at who's doing the towing, when they're doing the towing, and you can see some outliers, and that will give the city better information as to, wait, is there predatory towing going on here and how can we manage that? And then I also like the penalties for the violations. Of course, we can set the best consumer protections in place and the best rules in place, but unless we have some penalties to enforce that, bad actors will still be bad actors. So I think all combined, these provisions that you have here will really serve the public well and protecting them from what, is a very frustrating experience of getting your car towed.
Thank you very much. And to Kim Lowell.
Kim, unmute yourself, yeah.
There we go. I apologize. Thank you very much for inviting the Towing Association to participate in this panel today. Statewide Towing Association has represented the towing industry for over 51 years and within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. With regard to private property towing, obviously there are consumer issues, but there are also the property owners. They're entitled to use their property rights. And the towers are just merely providing a service. Now, with that being said, I did review the Mass Perg suggestions, and I do have several comments. Since the proposed ordinance follows the Mass Perg recommendations, I think the inaccuracies should be pointed out and clarified the services that we do provide. I'm in no way condoning any illegal form of trespass towing or private property impounds. That we as an industry strive for professionalism, treat everyone equally, abide by the laws as set by the Commonwealth. With that being said, there are protections in place in most cases for the consumers. I do, however, agree that everyone should be taking pictures prior to a tow. That protects the tower, it protects the consumer, it makes good sense. That way there's no damage claims. You can take a picture of the vehicle with the no parking sign, and it will make a much easier transition. That being said, there is in place a signage requirement or a verbal notification to the owner of the vehicle, the violating vehicle. Having signs, we can put the rates on them. In other places they do post the rates. It's a very limited amount of space, obviously. It would require probably the replacement of, I've heard estimates between 5,000 and 10,000 signs within the city, because every parking lot has signs. So it's a big undertaking. I would hope that would be, there would be some consideration given to how that would be accomplished. The word predatory really refers to businesses taking illegal advantage of consumers. I do take exception to the fact that this was called the predatory towing law or ordinance, because it is a private property or trespass tow ordinance. And there are a lot of good companies providing these services within the city. To further go on with the Mass Perg request, it says that we don't have to notify the owners. Well, actually we do. By statute, we have to send a certified letter. So normally what we would do is obtain the registration information and send a letter to the owner. The Department of Public Utilities, and this is where it regulates us, they set very specific requirements for us, including, by the way, we have to provide an itemized bill, including the fact that we are required to wait to send those notices out, because we're allowed to charge for those notices. We cannot send them out. They request that we don't send them out for 72 hours. So I'm not sure why the consumers are having trouble finding their cars if every single car is being logged in legally. Every single car that's legally towed is being logged in by the Boston Police. So should there be maybe a phone number for can't find your car, call here, whatever, posted on those signs. I wanted to address the credit card issue for a couple of reasons. A significant majority of tow companies will accept credit cards on private property impounds. Some do not, and there's a very good reason for it. The credit card processors have decided that towing is an unseemly business. As such, if it is not a voluntarily requested tow, for example, you broke down on the side of the road, you called me, asked me to tow your car. That is a voluntary tow. You're requesting that service, and there's no question. When you present your card with your chip, we process it through, there's no question. The minute it becomes an involuntary tow, so a drunk driving arrest, a private property impound, parking violation in front of a fire hydrant, those are considered involuntary tows. It is very simple for the person to present the card and walk out the door, call their credit card company, and dispute the charge. In most cases, depending on the processor, the towing company does not get paid. So it's a real issue. We've had members that have had hundreds of calls back charged to them. We're private entities. We're providing a public service. All we ask is that we get paid. So that's one of the issues. And interestingly enough, I know some tow companies actually have ATMs in their facilities for that reason. Let's see. As far as, there's a two-sided coin to a car being towed that's already hooked up. The driver's done all the work. He's headed out of the parking lot and the owner runs him down and says, please drop my car. He's provided all the work. The majority of the work has already been done. To give that back without being compensated, do you go to the vets, have your dog treated, the dog dies, do you still owe the vet the money? You do, because they provided a service. So I urge you to think about that. I don't condone, driving the wrong way. I heard some horror stories in these testimonies about driving the wrong way down the street, speeding. These people should be ticketed. There's no reason for it. Unless directed because there's a traffic incident and, the police officer says, please go down that way because you can't access it any other way to open a roadway. Designated hours to release a vehicle. What the Department of Public Utilities has said is that if you're going to charge storage, you have to give the person the opportunity to redeem their car at least one time during each day so that they don't incur an additional day of storage. As far as set business hours, that's just good business practices. Releasing 24 hours is not realistic in most cases, only because of staffing and the inherent danger of releasing late at night, just like anything else. And I wanted to address the personal items. So backing up the train a little bit, the Department of Public Utilities tells us that we have to release medications, wallets, car seats, winter coats, but we don't have to release every single item in the vehicle. It's vital items only. And there's a reason for this. It's because people just walk away. Consider in the city of Boston, in the members that I've surveyed, 30 to 40% of the cars they tow, they never get paid for. Yes, they can send them to scrap. That can fluctuate. By the time they do the legal process, it's 104 days minimum before they can get rid of that car. And salvage could be giving them $300 a car the day they towed it, and they could be paying a salvage yard to take it by the time they can actually get rid of it. So it's a very slippery slope. Usually if belongings, non-essential belongings are held, at least the people will come down and say, I can't afford the car. Can I have my belongings? Here's the title. Or can I give you a little bit of money in the title? And everybody's made whole. They get their belongings. The tower gets rid of the car without having to wait 104 days. Everybody's happy. Let's see. With regard to damage to the vehicles, reimbursing the vehicle owner directly can cause issues. The Department of Public Utilities requires us to carry insurance. So it should go through insurance. If you say we have to reimburse the owner, what happens if we go through insurance and then the owner says, I want to be reimbursed? It can't be both. It's got to be one or the other. So, and currently there is no law against patrolling private property. And I'll give you an example of one case that a small sandwich shop with 5 parking spaces, has no trespassing signs up, violators will be towed. Car pulls in, lady gets out, goes across the street, goes to the bank. She's in the bank for 15 or 20 minutes. This is a fast food place that, you know, you pull in, you grab a sandwich, you drive out. How many sales did that small business owner lose because that parking space was occupied by someone who had no right to be there? So that's where the spotters come in a little bit. I don't understand how they can notify the police department if it takes 5 or 10 minutes, if they're only gone 5 or 10 minutes. That, I don't understand that reality at all. I don't believe that in many cases that's actually what's happening. It might be 15 minutes. If it's 15 minutes and then they're going to be gone. That's the reality. I've tried to address every single issue. And I did have one more point to the personal belongings. If you rent a storage locker and you don't pay your rent, they don't get their belongings back. So just food for thought there. But anyway, questions or?
Thank you all. So what we normally do in terms of questions is we'll go from City Councilor to ask out the general questions to folks. We'll start with Councilor Braden, then go to Councilor Flaherty, then Councilor Flynn, then Councilor Campbell. Then if there's something that hasn't been asked, I might ask some questions. I think that's it for our councilors today. I do see 2 hands are raised. And just for those folks who are, I don't know if they're with any of the panelists, I have a Hayden FC and a Jem DG Toe and a Christopher Ferrer. Are any of those individuals associated with the city, with Perg, or with the Towing Association? If they're not, that's okay. I will just have them go on public testimony. I just didn't know if you had somebody come with you that I didn't call on. Looks like no one. Okay, so we're going to go to Councilor Braden. You can start asking questions, and then we'll go on to the next councilor. We try to keep the questions between 3 to 5 minutes, and then, yeah.
I had a question for Sergeant Spillane. Could he just outline exactly what the procedure is for a permissible tow? You know, what is the procedure? A car needs to be towed. What happens? What does the tow truck driver have to do to pick up the car, and who does he inform? How does that work?
So as far as towing goes with the police department, basically the circumstances I outlined for you is when the police department tows a car. So like, let's just say it's a snow emergency. The mayor's declared that tomorrow is going to be a storm. The procedure would be that the police officer would go out. Usually I think we try to do 2 hours of notifications with the cruiser over the PA system. The cruisers go up and down the streets with the blue lights, trying to inform the public that a snow emergency has been declared to move your cars off the streets. Yeah. And then ultimately it gets to the point that it's usually a designated time that City Hall and the police commissioner's office have decided upon, that, you know, the emergency starts at 4 and at 7 p.m. we'll actually start towing. And at that point, the supervisor will make a decision that, okay, we're going to bring in the tow trucks. The officer fills out slips for the cars that get towed. A copy goes to the police station. A log gets filled out, and the tow operator comes in and takes the car to the lot.
And so, you know, is the tow truck supposed to call in and get permission to a time stamped permission to remove a car?
So if it's not a police involved tow and they're just notifying us, yeah, the tow company would basically, our role is really administrative at that point. We have a 24/7 operations center that has a clerk that will collect the information from the tow company and give the tow company back a sequence number for their log. And then that is entered into a database that we have that's time-stamped with the vehicle information I had outlined before that contains information about why it was towed, the tow company, etc. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yes, that answers the question. One of the things that we're, from these reports that we're hearing from consumers are that, and from police officers actually, is that the time the time between putting the car is already on the hook before the police before the tow truck has notified the police department and got a time-stamped permission or record of the car being towed. I think this is the issue that happens, especially with the Uber Eats and the fast food deliveries that are being put on.
My understanding is the way it's supposed to work is exactly as you described. They're supposed to call the police department, and that authorization number goes out prior to the tow. I think part of the challenge here is that they're calling an operations center here at Boston Police Headquarters on a landline telephone. So the person on the other end of the phone really is not in a position to tell if to tell them the truth or not, if this car is in fact not already towed or has already been towed.
Yeah, because they have to decide if the car has been stolen, or if it's been involved in if the number's been associated with a crime, because it's checking, do a little background check on the car before it's towed, which is why.
That's certainly part of it, yeah. So when they call that number, that tow clerk is going to run through the Criminal Justice Information System, CJIS, that license plate, and they'll get information back again about the registered owner, again, if it was stolen or not, details about the car.
So you mentioned that you have a monitoring of towing, the logs and that you can see if there's a pattern of misbehavior, so to speak. How often is that reviewed and looked at for any potential outliers? Because those tow companies are reputable operators, but there are a few rogue operators.
So to clarify that role, we are the auditing and review division that I work for is part of the internal affairs division. And the logs that we look at are mostly related to contract tows for the police department. So there's multiple tow companies that the police department contracts with. And so let's just say for downtown example, there's Cityside and Tedisco. The logs we're looking at are mostly an internal look to make sure that officers aren't, for instance, just calling Cityside for all the tows and leaving out Tedisco and performing some sort of unscrupulous activity on that front. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. And then as far as the tow logs go, it's a matter of cross-referencing the logs at the station with the logs at the police headquarters and the logs at the tow company to make sure that all the cars being towed are in fact being properly documented and the process for them is being followed. And that is a periodic audit based on the unit commander's discretion. We do it multiple times a year and it's usually a random sample.
Good. Let's see what other questions. Thank you, Sergeant Spillane. That's all I have for you at the moment.
You're welcome, Councillor.
That's all I have for the moment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Flaherty?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me thank the panelists for participating, and also the tow companies, the owners and or their representatives for participating as well. And maybe there's something here that we could also do that helps them. Question really more for BTD on the moving permits. To some degree, a big portion of that is almost sort of what's the right word? Like the honor system, I guess, would be appropriate. Folks come in, they have apply, they come in, they get their own signs, and then they go out and they post their own sign. And I know that we do this across the city. We've got a number of companies, folks come in and get the signs, and they may put up signs for more than the spaces that they're allotted for,
Councilor
et
Flaherty?
cetera. And then people will get ticketed, and clearly if they win, the city reimburses. Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yeah, there was, at least on my end, there was a little bit of a breakup in some of the directness of your questions. Just to summarize, you were talking about specific signage, over signage of some companies for towing.
No. So when,
See, I can't, on my
folks
end,
come
Councilor
in
Flaherty.
and get when folks
No, Councilor Flaherty, maybe you want
to the BTD permit, this specifically pertains to anyone else here, what I'm talking about, moving permits? I'll reboot.
Okay, we'll come back to Councilor Flaherty. But I think Councilor Campbell may have had to step away for a little bit. We'll wait a little bit for Councilor Flaherty to get back on. I did have just some follow-up questions to make sure I'm very clear on what people are concerned about. To Ms. Lowell, I wanted to make sure I'm clear on on behalf of the Towing Association, and to be very clear, the goal is to go at bad actors, and I don't want you or anybody else to think that we as a Boston City Council are accusing the entire towing industry of being bad actors. Okay, I do want you to understand that there have been enough complaints brought to us because of some bad habits that we've seen. And I do appreciate you separating what is already prohibited from the law, right? And what is, and I do appreciate your opening statement where you said, quite frankly, you don't support any of those bad habits. That's not what you're here to do either. So I want to be very clear. This is not a us versus them conversation as far as we're concerned. I think Councilor Flaherty made it very clear. There is a role and absolute need for private towing in partnership with city towing for the services in the city of Boston, okay? So the goal is to figure out how we are notifying people of those rights, which I would say as a city, I used to work for the city, and in general, I think we could do in general a better job of letting people know what their rights are. Sure. I've had my car towed. I can tell you mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's not a
fun process.
It is not. And so my first thought is, where's my blankety blank car and why did this get taken away? And maybe we can do better at explaining to people, is your car gone? Calm down. These are the following steps you could take. So that's one thing I think we should all agree on. But I do think that there's a real concern about, and I see you, Councilor Campbell, so I'll wrap up, and Councilor Flaherty's also joined back. I do want to make sure, is there something about this beyond the title, okay? Is there something about, Sergeant Spillane mentioned some areas where there could be some additional notifications given by the city, by BPD. Were any of those, did you have concerns with those additional bits of information?
No, I think anything that makes it easier for the consumer to find their car and understand their rights goes a long way towards building a bridge that, we are a maligned industry. We don't have, like anything else, once you have a few bad actors, it causes no end of heartache for the rest of the industry. So I think, if we work together to streamline the process, make it easier for the consumer, make it easier for the tower providing the service, and everyone has a clear understanding, then certainly it's a much better environment. And
it's going to be painful. We acknowledge that. Look, there's no one's taking away the pain of having your car towed. No one's doing that. I wanted to quickly ask Deidre, with some of the there was certain inaccuracies that were noted or claimed to be inaccuracies. Did you want to address any of those?
No, I mean, our survey stands in the report, and it's based on the protections that were listed out in the DPU. So I'm happy if Kim, if you want to send me the particular issues that you had that were in conflict to what you believed, I'm happy to take a look at them. But at this point, our review was on the DPU rules and what they set in place and what they didn't set in place.
Okay. Councillor Campbell, I don't know if you wanted to go right now, or if Councillor Flaherty, if his connection's
Yeah,
better.
that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor
Do you
Edwards.
hear me?
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll be quick because I unfortunately have another conflict in another meeting at 3, but I somehow got booted off, but I'm back. So thank you. One of the things, and thank you to all the panelists for the information, which is helpful. And thank you again to the sponsors for sort of just moving this forward and establishing some consistency. But one of the things we've been hearing about quite a bit in the district is because of the lack of consistency in when folks are towed, they're creating some of these inequities. So one street, for example, gets ticketed and towed every week for street cleaning. Another may only get ticketed every week, even though, of course, the signage is the same. And there were a couple of constituents who asked, I think, the city, but also actual tow drivers about this, who spoke about, sometimes because of traffic, they run behind in schedule. So if your street is towards the end, you'll just get a ticket. You won't get towed, right? And so there's been real complaints around that. And so wanted to lift that up. I know there are a couple of constituents on who will testify to that. And so what does it mean to actually establish, one, to have information just about this, to document these inconsistencies is important, but also to establish some level of process, protocol, so that folks aren't getting towed from time to time. And one tow truck driver actually said that to one constituent in the district. They tow time to time. So there's a real inconsistency, which we know oftentimes will create inequities in terms of who's getting ticketed and towed. It can happen by neighborhood, et cetera. So I want to lift that up. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. We'll continue to follow it. I have 2 of my team members on taking extensive notes, and we'll review the rest of the recording. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, can you hear me? You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. So this is directed towards BTD on the permit parking. So it's the honor system. Residents come in, they get placards, they go out, they post the placards. We don't really do a good enough job monitoring that. And the complaints we're getting across the city is that folks may come in and they're taking more spaces than they're allotted, whether that's for a moving truck or it's the moving truck plus a couple of their own vehicles, and folks are getting ticketed and towed. When folks appeal that ticket, the city exonerates them, they honor it, but there's no recourse after the car's been towed. And so not quite sure whether or not we could work anything into that in specific instances where a vehicle goes towed. Maybe it goes back to the folks that applied for the permit. Maybe there's a penalty associated with that. Again, just want to think about it. These are calls that I get, and it pertains to the Boston Transportation Department's moving permit program. It's the honor system. Folks come in, they get the placard, honor system, they go out and they're supposed to post it 48 hours. Some people are not posting it 48 hours. Some are doing it 24 hours. And also they're only supposed to take so many spaces. In some instances, they're taking more. And then a neighbor is getting ticketed and towed. And when the neighbor appeals, oftentimes they win at the city level, but they're still out of pocket on the tow piece. So, and I referenced earlier, thanking the panelists for their time and also for the tow companies and their representatives for being on there, because we may learn some stuff and we may be able to incorporate some of their real life experiences into whatever changes we make here. So thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Did someone want to address or just kind of summarize, or Councillor Flaherty's comment, question?
I'll say just a couple of things. I just want to clarify, and then maybe Mel can jump in and explain the process on the street. But if someone does dispute a ticket and a tow, if their ticket is dismissed, they should also get their tow expenses refunded. So if there's, and that's through the Office of the Parking Clerk. So, and then Mel, maybe you want to talk about the process out in the street.
Good afternoon, everyone. Usually we get complaints with the send supervisors out to look at the the permit, there's supposed to be the permit holder there and posted on the permit zone, the address. Well, he's right, Councilor Flaherty's right. They usually take up more spots. So we just started towing within the permit spot. And if they post the signs wrong, we don't touch the cars at all. We tell them that, you have to come back to tow them. Because we started running into a lot of people taking up more spots. So if the permit holder isn't there with the permit, we stop towing. I tell everybody, just drive off, just tell them, we need to see the permits. Our people need to see the permits. A lot of questions be asked. I get a lot of calls from enforcement supervisors, asking me, there's no permit holder there to keep going. If the moving company's there or a private person's there with the permit and they're posted right, first thing we do is try to we run the plates to try to find the owner of the vehicle to ask them to move. Most of the time, they come out to move them. A lot of people, they're not there, they're out of town, so that's the cars we end up bringing in.
Thank you. I'm going to go to public unless someone had a very quick question, but I actually had a quick question. Honestly, this is a real life experience, so you explained this to me. I'm going to say somebody I know, it was me. And I parked on my street, okay? And I did not see, there's a back of a house that seems to be totally unmarked. And there's a curb cut that they've inherited when they bought the house. So on the side, the public street, back of the house, looks like a gravel kind of backyard. It doesn't look any kind of marked or anything. There's no sign at all. There's no sign at all. And so, she said this is her private way and I couldn't block it. So I moved, but I really wondered if would I have been towed and ticketed just by her calling because of the curb cut. There's no sign there. I want to be very clear. There's no sign, will be towed. There's nothing. Just a curb cut that she seemed to inherit.
Is there a city curb cut there or a man-made curb cut?
Well, I don't know the difference in quality. I mean, it's a curb cut. I couldn't tell you. I mean, do I look that up? Would I go look that up?
No, you don't have to look it up. When you go there and see it, a man-made curb cut when somebody stacked 2x4s or something on top to make it easier to get up on the sidewalk to get to a driveway.
No, it's cut into the cement. Must be.
Then there doesn't have to be a sign there. That is basically a driveway. That's basically a driveway.
Well, I moved my car, but still. Okay, good to know. I still think that they should at least mark it at, I don't know, would that be part of the Tourist Bill of Rights that we could make it, that they at least have to mark that they would tow off of the city street?
You can actually call the sign shop and have them put up a sign on each side of the driveway. It says no driveway.
Wait.
A lot of people do that.
No.
We don't. We used to do that, Mel. The city does no longer provide those signs.
Personally, I just think it's a matter of notice, honestly. Like at night in the dark, I would not have seen that curb cut. But for her saying this is a driveway, I've been there for 15 years and didn't know. And so that's all I'm saying. I don't know, maybe Councilor Brady and I could talk about, I just felt like that was a kind of a get you, like would have been caught and parking on the street. So, all right, that's enough about my personal life and lived experience with this. Councilor Brady, if it's okay, I'd like to go to public testimony unless you have any questions.
I just want to get something straight. The notion that you have to call, and I'm going on about this a bit, but the notion that you have to call in a tow, call it into the tow line at the BPD before you hook up a car. Does that apply to public and private lots? Is that whose question's that?
I guess.
Officer Spillane sorry, go ahead, Mr. Smith.
I'll chime in on it. I just, I throw in the caveat. I'm not like the be-all expert on towing, but I think it's important to like at a high level understand the whole point of notifying the police department of the tow. And it's not that we as a police department are giving permission or making a judgment call. We're serving as this like central collection point as an agency that's operating 24 hours a day, so that when people ultimately come back and their car is gone, we have a 24-hour phone number that they can reach out to and ask two questions. One, like, is my car towed? And if it's not, can I have services for my car to be reported stolen? Both of which we kind of provide.
Yeah.
Because I think the more I think about it, like in the instance of like a snow emergency or BTD doing street cleaning, it's the clerks cannot enter this information. There's only a couple people that work up there as fast as this fleet of tow trucks tows entire streets for street sweep. So there is inevitably some sort of delay. It's not real time that like before this car gets towed, it ends up in this computer program. But I think it's also important to say that like when they call these clerks, they're not making some level of judgment like, yes, you're allowed to tow this one, but no, you're not allowed to tow that one.
Yeah, so it's just really more of a recording device to try and help people know where they're.
At the end of the day, to the BTD commissioner's point, the city only has so many tow trucks, and it can't basically service the volume of towing that needs to occur. And so you end up with this fleet of private companies that augment what BTD does. And so cars end up in all these different places. So if you don't have some sort of single reference point for everybody to look to, you'd never find your car.
Yeah, and the other issue, I think, to Councillor Campbell's point about towing on days for ticket and towed for street cleaning across the district, is such an inequitable distribution of that rule. We often wonder, just ticket people rather than just ticket and towing. It's such such an inequitably applied rule that it's problematic. Anyway, that's all from me now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To my colleagues who are still on, if it's okay, I'm going to go to public testimony. We have some hands raised. People who have are very excited about talking. And so I'm going to now go in order of the hands getting raised and folks who have asked to speak. First was, Tim McDonald. Before we go, just to let folks know who are going to give some public testimony, we try to keep the testimony to 2 minutes or so that we can allow for everyone to speak before you can either speak again. So in order of the first three, I have Tim McDonald, Christopher Ferreira, and Pat Tedisco. Tim, if you are able to speak, you can unmute yourself. Okay.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I joined the Zoom pretty late, so I didn't catch the first half of it. However, three things I would like to touch on, and I share a lot of the sentiments that Kim has. One, as far as payment, as I gather from the mention of it, there may be.
Tim, before you continue, could you tell us, you're Tim McDonald from, are you Boston or is there a company?
Tim McDonald, I am the owner of Total Fleet Services, and I have 20 years in the towing industry, towing and recovery industry in and out of the city of Boston.
Thank you.
So I do share a lot of the most sentiments that Kim had mentioned, and, one regarding forms of payment. There are many towing companies in the city of Boston that will not accept credit cards for that reason. However, there are many towing companies that know that having cash on demand is an inconvenience and accept a debit card in the form of a PIN-based transaction. That's one thing I would like the city council to keep in mind, as the likelihood of a credit card transaction being disputed by someone that was involuntarily towed is high. However, the debit card with the PIN-based transaction is a safe method for the towing company to be reimbursed. Second, I would like to touch on it as far as the city council enacting any ordinance with respect to notifications. There is a system in place within the city of Boston where residents within the city can go onto the City of Boston website and register for tow notifications. I have been in discussions with James McGee and Matt McGowan as far as getting that back up and running. I am pretty sure that that's something, you know, maybe the city council should reach out to the IT department within the city to see if they can get that moving a little bit quicker. The last thing I heard was, and forgive me, I forget who mentioned it, with respect to a refund for the tow. And Kim, please forgive me if you have already touched on this. I take no stance on whether or not a refund for tow should or should not be given. Frankly, that's up to the board here. However, as someone that owns and manages day-to-day their own towing company within the city of Boston, I will say this. It is extremely unfair that if we tow someone and for whatever reason through the appeal process, through BTD, they win their ticket for whatever reason, that we are forced to give them a refund. That would be extremely unfair. Again, I take no stance on whether or not the city council, whether or not the city should, in fact, you know, put that in the ordinance. However, if it does go in the ordinance, then it should not be the towing company reimbursing the individual who got towed that may not have, that has won their appeal. That is all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair, for hearing me.
Thank you, Tim. Up next is Christopher Ferreira, and then Pat Tedisco, and then I will call in, we have a Gem DG Tow, whose hand is raised to go after Pat. Christopher?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I have a cold a little bit, so bear with my scratchy voice. I apologize. My name is Chris Ferreira. I'm a third-generation towing business owner, and I just like to address a few points in your proposal. I do not have a business or work for a business in the city of Boston. I want to put that right on the table. Okay, this proposal was brought to my attention, and I reviewed it, and I found some issues with it. I do agree with some of the things that were said today in the meeting, which I think were very important. And I'm going to skip over some of the redundant things that I have that I've jotted down here for the council. But I will make my statement here available through email so that all the councilors can receive a copy of it, so I don't go to this whole long process, and I apologize. The first thing for me is this predatory towing. And I know Kim Lowe spoke about this. I think it's very important to note that we're talking about two separate things going on in the city. You're talking about police towing and BTD towing, okay? And then you're talking about private property towing. Those are two separate issues that need to be addressed separately, completely. You know, when you call towers predatory towing for doing their jobs, I find that very bad. So I'm just going to read something to you real quick. The proposed ordinance is to address private property towing practices in the city of Boston. Each business, every municipality, every person has room for improvement. Whether you're the police, politicians, etc., all professions have bad apples. I'm not saying that all towing companies are perfect. However, by insulting towing professionals as predators, or even calling this new ordinance predatory practices, is insulting and disrespecting to the towing professionals that worked through COVID and typically work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who are actually first responders beside the police and fire departments. Let me ask you a question. Are the police officers that patrol the streets of Boston with cameras on their cruisers that are looking for unregistered cars, uninsured cars, or violations? Is that an act considered predatory? Are they considered predators? In the Boston Transportation Department, who drives, which I'm understanding this, I don't have firsthand knowledge, but I was told, drive around with cameras on their vehicles, seeking people for not paying parking tickets to get booted, or is that type of an action predatory? The towing industry as a whole are full of wonderful people who support their communities immensely, and there does come up a bad apple once in a while. And I don't think that, stopping all private property and trespass towing patrolling is going to resolve the problem. A lot of the issues that were brought up in this ordinance are already in place. The protections are already there. And I do agree with Kim Lowell that some of the things that Perg is saying are not 100% accurate. For example, the itemized billing. You have to have an itemized bill for every tow that you do for the state of Massachusetts, non-consent tow, or the person can file a complaint with the DPU and get their money back. There's a lot of talk of excessive charges and rampant overcharging. And I'm not going to say that that doesn't happen and there aren't bad apples that do it. But if the person files a complaint with the DPU and submits their receipt for that service to them, they investigate it. If they found that the contractor, or the licensed towing company, overcharged the consumer, they will force the company to reimburse and also could suspend their rights to tow in the state of Massachusetts. Another issue that was in this was proper notice. There is, I'm jumping around here, so I apologize, but it will be in the letter. There's a law in place that all properties have to be posted to tow cars off the properties. They have to be posted, it's a law. So if a tow company goes into a private property lot or an apartment building and they tow a vehicle and it's not posted, they're not allowed to do that. So in essence, they're violating the law and they should be held accountable, in my opinion. I agree with Ms. Lowell and I think Mr. McDonald's statements about payment methods. I can speak for an experience. We've towed multiple cars. We don't take credit cards. And a couple of times I tried to help somebody. I took their credit card. Soon as they got in the car out the door, they called their credit card company and stopped the charges. And for us to get that money was a huge hurdle. In some instances, we didn't get it, even though we followed the law and did what we were supposed to do to perform that service that was provided. So I do agree that I take certified bank checks. I take money orders, and we take cash raw payments on private property tows. As far as rate signs at our payment centers, it's my business policy that we have the signs posted in our payment centers of what the rates are. And if they don't agree with the rates, we also put a sign that says they can file a complaint with the Department of Public Utilities, who regulates us. As far as cameras, I have a business, as a business owner, I made a business decision that my employees take pictures of the cars. I think it's only common sense to protect the consumer, to protect the towing company, and to protect everybody involved. And I will tell you, multiple times those photos have saved my business from false claims, from people providing insurance fraud and stuff like that. The no fee for an incomplete tow. If the driver goes to pick up an all-wheel drive car, sometimes it takes him 15 minutes to hook up that car with dolly wheels and the proper equipment. And if the person's watching from the window, comes down after the guy's all done, it is in place that he can charge half the tow fee and the mileage and tow fee to that vehicle. So that is already a law that's in place to protect the consumer, access to personal items. I agree with what Kim Lowell said. My company policy is we give medicine, anything to do with children, keys, stuff like that, keys to homes. But if you let them clean out the car completely, they're going to abandon the car at the tow yard. And Kim explained the time we have to hold the car and stuff. And that would get the person to come back to try to negotiate with them to resolve the issue and make everybody, maybe not 100% whole, but make people satisfied. Itemized bills, I went over that. We've already done that. And again, the complaint issues. I really have a big issue with this statement of predatory towing. That's really one of the biggest things I have, and the option that you're putting out there to not allow tow companies to patrol. The problem is these cities and towns, they're building these huge apartment buildings with 300 parking spaces and just enough parking spaces for the tenants. So when you have people that come into these parking spaces that don't live there, that loiter there, or in some instances, a criminal activity, and they leave their vehicles there and they go do criminal activity, the police don't patrol these lots. Okay, the tow trucks patrol the lots. And, you'll have an instance where in the middle of the night, you'll have a single mother who worked a double shift. She'll come home. She's got no place to park because somebody else decided they were going to have a party, or somebody didn't want to respect the property rights there and park the car there. So there is a big service involved in the community with the patrol towing as far as apartment buildings go and residential things go. I will just give you a brief example because it happened to myself. We have an apartment building. Go ahead.
Mr. Ferreira, after this example, we're going to go ahead and allow. Okay.
Absolutely. I was involved in this myself. I went to an apartment building, which also had a business in it, to do a private property tow. While I was there, there was a business next door. Some gentlemen come out of that business at 2 o'clock in the morning, went behind the dumpsters. Okay. I was hooking up a vehicle that was illegally parked, no permit, at the elderly housing. The gentleman walked out from behind the dumpsters. I turned my head and looked. The dumpsters were on fire underneath the elderly housing complex. Had I not been there towing that car through my patrolling of that apartment building, things could have been real worse. I grabbed another gentleman from the sidewalk. We moved the dumpster out from underneath the building, and we're able to get the dumpster in the middle of the parking lot for the fire department to come down and put it out. So there are a lot of things involved in the patrol towing that might not be mentioned during this conversation. And, I would recommend, I'm going to send this letter off. I'm going to put my phone number on it. I would be more than happy to sit down, even though I'm not in Boston, but to speak with any counselor or anybody involved in this forum about those issues and things that we can work together to try to, make this a good policy for everybody involved.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have a Pat Tedisco, and then Hayden FC.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pat Tedisco. I'm the owner of Tedisco Towing, located in East Boston and Roxbury. I agree with some of the things that Christopher said and Kim and everybody on this panel. I do believe needs to be some cleanup, some guidelines for towing companies to follow for this type of service. As Christopher said, I think this conversation's kind of gone all over the map from 3 different types of towing: police ordered towing, private property towing, and then obviously the City of Boston street cleaning program. I guess when it comes to the private property towing, it's probably the most important, and that's why this meeting was called. Being one of Boston's largest towing company and probably one of the higher volume towers in the city, I understand people's frustrations. I get it. But I don't think that it's being looked at on both sides. Property in Boston is not inexpensive. Parking in Boston is not inexpensive. So when somebody procures a parking spot, they want it to be available when they need it, residents or businesses. So therefore, I think that obviously towing is needed. When it comes to the regulations, the 24-hour release, both of our locations are open 24 hours. You can pick up your car at 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. It doesn't matter to us. It's all the same. We gladly take every credit card possible. Completely understand that nobody has cash. the invoices. Everybody gets a computerized invoice, itemized, with every single charge broken down. All of our rates are regulated by the DPU, like you've heard from multiple people today. The DPU is very active, and they do enforce their rules. So if somebody is being charged something outside of the DPU regulation, if they sent it into the DPU, they're getting reimbursed. I'm very, very confident in that. And do I know that there's tow companies in the city that aren't doing the right thing? Yes, absolutely. And I've reached out to some of them and tried to help out and say, listen, you're making us all look bad, and it's not good. The signage, with the rates on the signage, to do that, the rates are going to be changing. They go up, they go down. I think it's definitely something that doesn't need to be done. If maybe there was a one line at the bottom of the sign, per Mass DPU, with the website for them to look it up, to see what the current rates are, the regulations, the rules, all that stuff, that's one thing. But I can tell you right now, I have at least 1,500 signs that I've provided to customers in the city. 500 of those being the Boston School Department. We are the largest tower for the Boston School Department. The Boston School Department would be affected by this new program of the no patrol type towing, as in we all know that residents are allowed to park in school parking lots during school off hours. They got to be out by certain times in the morning, depending on the time the school opens, for parking for the staff and students if it's a high school, obviously. So if that was eliminated and we couldn't patrol those parking lots per the principal's orders or the school department's orders during those certain hours in the morning to make sure there was no cars there so that the teachers could park, how would they find parking? Are the principals going to come in 2 hours early in the morning and stand out there and say, tow that car, tow this car? Are they going to have to make the custodians do that? That's an issue. In regards to the school department, also the snowstorms. There's no parking in school property during snowstorms. When I first heard of this years ago, I thought it was odd because I know you call a snow emergency and you want everybody off the street and school's closed, let's park in the school lot. And then when the facilities director explained it to me, he says, listen, we need to plow the lots. We need to get the parking lots open so that we can get school back open. So that's why nobody's allowed to park in the school lots. So they have us during snowstorms. They put us on notice via telephone call, patrol these schools, make sure nobody's in the spots, nobody's in the parking lots, so that the plows can do their job. If a representative from each school needs to be there, this is not going to happen. It's going to be very difficult. And it's the same thing with the apartment buildings, the 156 Porter Street, East Boston, the Shore Plaza, all those places that have resident parking. People have resident stickers on their car. You go into your resident or your office, your management office, show them that you live there, prove that your registration is in that address, they'll give you a resident sticker. This, obviously, just like Christopher said, the buildings don't really have extra parking, so there's no room. There's special spots for visitors, visiting nurses, all that stuff. If we're not allowed to patrol that, these people are going to be inconvenienced that are allowed to park there from violators. The property management companies hire us to do this. It's no different than hiring a security guard at any facility. This is where I see the issues when it comes to the private property stuff. Do I agree there's some very aggressive towing going on in the city of Boston? Yes. Can it be cleaned up? Yes. But I think a lot of the things are already in place. They just need to be looked at and maybe enforced a little bit more. When it comes to the notifications, just like Kim said, we are required to send a certified letter to the last registered owner of every vehicle within 5 days after 72 hours. So it's a very small window that we're required to send it. But the city of Boston does have a great system, and I wasn't aware it wasn't working, but you register your license plate. Anytime your car is cleared through the toll line, you're notified. You could be text, email, called by your robocall. You can also go to the City of Boston website and punch in your plate number, and it will tell you where your car was towed to if the tow company properly cleared it. Say we tow a lot of cars for street cleaning, the same people over and over too. A lot of times people are calling us at the office saying, you towed my car, and we don't even have the car at the facility yet because it was cleared at the location it was being towed from on a tow truck on the way to the facility, and the people already know their car's being towed before we even have it in storage. So I think the city's they're already doing a pretty good job with the notification stuff. I think one of the other things when it comes to the towers is, I think the city could go out and say, hey, who's calling into the tow line? When you call into the tow line, you give your tow company name. Do all these tow companies have DPU certificates? Are they truly allowed to do involuntary tows? I know there's a few that's not.
Right.
It's towing cars from private property in the city. So the DPU really has no jurisdiction over them because they're not certificate holders. So I guess you could take a survey from, Sergeant Spillane's office and say, hey, who are the towers that are calling in, and do a simple search on the DPU website and see if they really truly are certificate holders and legitimate tow companies to provide this type of service. There's a lot of things that can be done differently. I don't think it can be eliminated. It's obviously a necessary service for our property owners, just like any of us. If we get home today at 6 o'clock and there's somebody in our driveway, I mean, are you going to go find a parking spot on the street, or are you going to say, hey, that's my driveway? The car needs to be towed out of there. The tow line takes their job very serious as well. They want the cars cleared. We come across many cars that they're saying, no, you can't tow it. It's stolen. We're calling the police.
So
I think there's, like I said, this conversation needed to be had.
yeah.
It absolutely did. But I think it just, before something's eliminated, I think we got to look at all aspects of it. And that's really it. That's what like I said, I'm here to answer any questions that I can help with. I am the guy from Boston on this panel that's towing cars. Thank you.
Thank you. So just it's very clear to us, and I want to demonstrate to those who represent the industry or those who are working hard in the industry. The title has been something that's been a recurring theme and concern. And just quick little back and forth with my co-sponsor. So I'm the sponsor along with Councilor Barrett, and we're happy to remove the word predatory from the title, as it's very clear from what we're hearing back in feedback, that is something that you feel is maligning you, and for some of you feels that it's setting you up to be judged and seen as doing something nefarious, something illegal, and something that is just hurtful and wrong, when as many of you as business owners have testified, you're just doing your job and operating your business. So I did want to note that we did hear that, not just from Kim, but from you. And so we can absolutely amend the title of this. And again, this is a conversation. It's proposed legislation. It's not been passed, and in no way, shape, or form does it get rid of towing. It's about regulating and notice and certain concerns and methods. So just, I don't know, for those of you who are still here and listening and ready to testify, we will change the title.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a Hayden FC, and then
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then a Jem G. Toe and a Mama Walsh. I'm reading as the names are. If you could just say your first and last name and company, or what you're operating, what the other previous speakers have said, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So Hayden.
Thank you. My name is Hayden Frederick Clark. I have been at the throat of my city councilor, Ms. Andrea Campbell, and her staff about this issue for going on 4 years now. To speak specifically to the language of predatory, I do find towing in my neighborhood specifically, speaking on behalf of those who live in the Columbia Road, Erie Street corridor and the larger Grove Hall area, it is a predatory experience for us. Our cars are regularly towed 5 to 15 minutes before the stated time at which we have to move our cars. I'd like to name that it's not only the tow company. I view the city as complicit and predatory in this practice as well, given that for those of us who live in the Columbia Road, Erie Street corridor, Erie Street only has one legal side for parking. On street cleaning days, we lose that side, and then we lose half of the housing stock, half of the parking stock within the rectangular area. That said, persons who take the commuter rail often come into the neighborhood early and park their cars on the appropriate side of the street, thus leaving us with nowhere to park. And let's also name that given the housing stock, many of us do not have driveways and garages in which to park, which then leads to my bigger beef with the city in that I now have provable, quantifiable evidence that neighborhoods like West Roxbury, like Roslindale and Jamaica Plain, not only have situations where their streets are clean without being towed, they also are not ticketed. So on a number of occasions, I've been parked in Jamaica Plain or Roslindale or West Roxbury simply as a reckless experiment to see what would happen to my vehicle in these neighborhoods. And I've watched with my own two eyes. I even have a video recording of it if anyone would like to see it, with the street cleaning vehicle going around my car and doing what is supposed to be done without even a ticket being left on my vehicle. That said, if I were parked in front of my own home, my car again would have been towed 5 to 15 minutes earlier, which is to say we have a massive fleecing of Black and brown residents, poor and working class residents going on in this city. It's been going on for years and years and years and years. Again, the poor Black and brown people who cannot afford driveways and garages are being told, while their wealthier neighbors in Jamaica Plain, Roslindale, and West Roxbury, who have the opportunity to park off street, are not. So the idea that we will remove the predatory language, I'm uncomfortable with. I feel like, again, if we start to look at who has spoken on this call thus far, there are a lot of industry heads, there are a lot of people who represent toll companies who feel like they've been castigated, and perhaps that's true in certain instances. But as regards street cleaning specifically, absolutely we have a predatory phenomenon going on. The wealth transfer, both from Black and brown residents to a white-run industry that we refer to as towing, to a city that is not well representative, to the residents in other parts of the city who then enjoy that labor, given that many of the people who are towing these neighborhoods do not live in these neighborhoods. It absolutely is predatory. Again, I'm not sure what can be done. If we are going to tow in one place, I say we should be towing in all places, or let the towing requirement be lifted completely and let's settle on a ticket price. And to this idea of pricing, it has become so egregious and ridiculous that from any one year to the next, the fee it costs to get your car back or get your vehicle back from the towing company has some arbitrary increase that no one can account for. So I can't necessarily think about why it may be $40 or $50 more expensive to release your car from a toll lot than it would be in the year prior, right? It exceeds inflation. So the idea that this is somehow a cost formula or equation seems preposterous to me. And again, it speaks to unmitigated power that certain players have. And in my mind, it speaks to a neat, quiet relationship between certain industries and City Hall. And with that, I close.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I think we were going to, was it Mary Shields?
Yes.
And then Jem G. Toe. Go ahead, Mary.
Hi, my name is Mary Shields. I am an owner and operator here at Walsh Towing. I myself have been driving a tow truck for 30 years, amongst other duties here. I agree with what most of the panel and participants have said. Predatory towing, I don't think is a good term. And we do all have room for improvement. Like you said, there's bad apples in every industry. First of all, if any constituents have a problem or a concern, I would suggest that they directly contact the towing company's operatives. If that doesn't work, then contact the DPU. We are under regulation. They do investigations and they hand out their own punishments, which are usually just on both the part of the towing company and the constituent. Also, I wanted to address the issue of one-way streets. Sometimes it is necessary to come out of, say, Excel High School in South Boston, the lower parking lot. If people are parked all the way up against the curb and you need to get a vehicle out of there, for instance, because, somebody's up there lighting fires, which has happened, or, just the dumpster needs to be emptied. If someone is parked against the curb and you cannot take a left turn to get out, you sometimes have to, it's not exactly taking a right turn, but you're going to try to go down a one-way street that's across from it to your right a little bit. That is technically taking one way the wrong way. Sometimes it is necessary, but all tow operators should also have their emergency lights on, as we are emergency vehicles. As far as the rules and regulations go, most towing companies do deal with the DPU directly, as should constituents. Every towing company has the rules and regulations available to them, as do the constituents. But if you can't find your vehicle, then most times we'll pop it into the computer for you and tell you where your vehicle is. So as Pat Tedisco and Gem and A&B and Peters and a lot of the other towing companies that are out there are listening and watching, most of us are helpful and try to do the best that we can. And this is our livelihood. Trying to put even more restrictions on it is basically trying to put a lot more of us out of business that survived during the COVID. Most of us worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the COVID to possibly get a handful of tows a week. And also, consumers need to realize this is a job. It does require using equipment, which is specialized equipment. And if they want us to put cars down when they come out without paying for them, as far as trespass towing goes, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It all depends on the situation, but that is a courtesy that we all offer. It's not mandatory, but it is a courtesy that most of us offer, period. Other than that, I'm available for any questions that any of you have. And if you'd like to have another meeting, I more than likely would be happy to attend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we have Jem.
Excuse me, Councilor, if I can just chime in and remind that I had a hard stop at 4 p.m. in case there's any directions towards me.
Thank you. Jem, DG Tow.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Gabriella. I'm actually the owner of D&G Towing out of Alston, Brighton. So one thing that I actually wanted to talk about was actually street cleaning. You guys mentioned it, and also a little bit about trespassing too. You guys mentioned about how it works. A little bit of how it works, actually. The city of Boston actually starts notifying consumers or constituents basically way ahead of actual street cleaning commencing time. They actually post on their electronic little police signs, however you want to call them, stating that street cleaning will commence from April 1st all the way down to November 30th. And also, that being said, they also state, they give out signs, letters, they put on letters on vehicles, probably maybe a month or something so prior to street cleaning happening, to notify them that their vehicle will be towed and it's going into effect. The city of Boston does have a website that every car gets logged into that gets towed for street cleaning and is on that website. So if you don't know your plate number, it will be in a little bit of an issue. But if you do know your plate number and you plug it into that webpage, it's going to automatically tell you who has your vehicle. Now, as terms as 5 minutes towing, there's no such thing as 5 minutes. We're going to tow your vehicle. No. Tow line deals with 8 or 9 or more companies. Tow line is only a number of 4 or 5 people at most, and we're only allowed to call in 5 vehicles per call. Okay, that means there's times where we're waiting 30 minutes, we're waiting 15 minutes, we're waiting an hour, we're waiting long extended periods of times to actually tow vehicles. Not to mention, the city of Boston does make $35 back for each vehicle that does get towed. So it's something that it's put upon us that we have to do this. We do it in a timely manner. And if somebody does come out to their vehicle and they have the keys to move their vehicle, we do release the vehicle. So we will unhook your vehicle, put it down, as long as you are able to move it then and there. If you are not able to move it and you're not able to come back with your keys within a matter of a couple of minutes, because it takes us another few minutes to hook up the secondary vehicle or wait for the clearance on that secondary vehicle, then you're going to have to pick it up at the tow company, unfortunately. Our drivers, now that COVID has hit, is a little bit different, but we do offer the opportunity for those who are willing and are nice and come up to us in a nicely manner. We do offer them rides to the tow yard. We're actually not hard to work with. It's sometimes people make it difficult to work with us because they're already upset that they got towed. Signs are posted on each street that notifies you what day you're going to get towed, what week you're going to get towed. It's posted. The city does an awesome job on posting when you're going to get towed, if you're going to get towed, what side. And there's also a link on the website, the city's website, that tells you if you're not sure what side your street is supposed to get towed or ticketed and towed. It tells you exactly on the webpage, on the city's webpage. I think that's something, there's always a city inspector on site with us, with the sweeper, who's also there. So if people do come out and do have questions or need to get their vehicle back, the city inspector does come out to talk to the tow operator, and they'll let the tow operator know, hey, this customer is here. The vehicle owner is present. Please drop the vehicle. We always do. And if the city, say for instance, Joseph Smith or Abigail or other few people within the city of Boston do give us a call and say, hey, can you cut this person a break because of certain circumstances within their living situation, we always do. There's not one situation that we have not done it for, we have not done favors for. I personally myself have heard stories, and I would definitely give cars back for free if I knew the situation. The problem is people do not know how to communicate with us because they're already upset, and we get it. We get it. Everybody deserves to be upset because they actually get towed. I've gotten towed a couple times myself. I forgot. I did not look at a sign. I can't get upset with the tow company. But it's also my responsibility to look at the sign and say, hey, it says towing. I can't just automatically think, well, I'm going to run into the store 5 minutes. I should not get towed. No, it's the person's job, to actually figure it out. Hey, am I going to get towed or am I not going to get towed? If I'm not sure, let me look it up on the website and see if there's any postings that tells me if I'm going to get towed or not. In relation to private property impound.
If you can, in terms of testimony. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. In regards, this is my testimony. I know that a lot of most of the tow companies have agreements with the property management, and most property managements always notify visitors. They notify their employees, tenants of towing policies. And they also post signs at every entryway and every single post that they're able to post saying that they will get towed for private property impound at their own expense. So I believe that this is something that needs to be discussed more, yes. But I think that this is, a little bit, to try to stop this from happening. Streets do need to get cleaned. They do need to be, cleared when snow emergencies happen. So, that's just my say.
Thank you. So we've gone through public testimony, and we've also heard from panelists and different opinions about this. Again, this is not eliminating private towing. This is more of a regulation and getting at the bad actors. We will discuss this ordinance, and in this form. Traditionally, we go from the hearing where we hear from folks, and there will be, I'm sure, plenty of written testimony. I think somebody said that they had suggestions and questions that they were going to send via email. That becomes part of the public record. And then we have traditionally a working session where we go directly into the language of the ordinance and work on or negotiate parts that are necessary, not necessary, duplicative, and then ultimately we would present it up for passage is how the process normally works. With the way the year is going, it may require us to have the hearing now and then possibly a working session into next year. We'll see what we can get done in the next couple months. I do appreciate everyone coming here today. I think it was an excellent conversation. It was, if anything, an example of how people can disagree or have perspectives and be absolutely respectful towards each other. So thank you all for coming to speak. I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Braden for any final remarks. And then we will end today's hearing on the towing practices and establishing a towing bill of rights.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone who participated in the conversation this afternoon. As Councillor Edwards mentioned, this is, the first step. It's a hearing. I hope that we will move forward to a working session that we can get more into the details of what we're proposing. For not for 1 minute, am I suggesting that towing is unnecessary? Absolutely, it's a very vital service. It is just an attempt by this body to try and establish some, firm guidelines that are clear to the public to help our residents and our constituents understand, but also to help send a signal to some folks who are bad actors in the business that this will not be tolerated. So I appreciate all the great work and the incredible testimony from you all this afternoon, and I look forward to continuing the conversation in the not too distant future. Thank you all.
Thank you. Goodbye.